Alrighty, you have made it to the final segment of the night on pivotal change, and we're going to really summarize and wrap up everything that we've been talking about today with Steve from Blueprint Ventures. So he did a wonderful job going through all of the different changes and the mindset and what is to be looked at and emphasized, and how leaders are supposed to develop culture and select teammates. And he mentioned things very heavily into culture and core values. And he ended with a really profound statement about how to be a better, if I said you wanted to learn something about leadership, he said how to be a better leader. He referenced a book or two and some other guides. And so I really want to launch from there and talk about how to become a better leader. At CS Business Consulting, I believe that leaders are made, not born. Some people do have a slightly higher propensity than others in certain characteristics that may make the journey easier, but anyone can be developed into a very good and influential leader. In order to do that, you have to spend time in educating yourself. You have to spend time in self reflection and finding out who you are, trying to gain as much life experience as possible along your journey with diverse amounts of people, being open minded, like Steve also mentioned, and receiving information that lets you know when to change or when to buckle down and drive through and be that immovable force. One of the things that I have found in my journey that I also help other people develop is something called a leadership philosophy. Now, leadership philosophy, it really is nothing new. It's been around for hundreds of years, and most prevalently, it is found in the military. So, military tends to lead a lot of its structure and things into law enforcement, which is where I learned about it. And during my law enforcement leadership development, a leadership philosophy came into some of the training that I went to, and I really grabbed a hold of it. And I continue to expand on this model and this philosophy by research and development, and again, self reflection. So, one of the things I want to do is you'll get to see an example of my leadership philosophy today on the show. And I'm not going to play story time and go line by line, but a leadership philosophy is generally a fairly short document or segment. It's usually maybe a page and a half, a couple of pages. Some of the longest ones I've ever seen are like three and a half pages. And people do this all the way from the admiral in the Navy and the generals all the way down to the first level sergeants. And it happens in law enforcement. It happens in high level corporate worlds. And this is what a leadership philosophy is for. In summary, it is your brain, your methodology, your mindset on leadership articulated into a paper tool that other people can use. Imagine if you had the power as a leader to be absent and a critical event or a critical decision occurs and is needing to be decided upon. Someone could take this leadership philosophy document and they can look and ask the questions to resolve this incident or this scenario and say, what would Ryan do? And in his absence, you have my personal values. You have my operating principles. You have the expectations in which I live and run my life and company on. Furthering down from the operating principles and expectations, you know what is non negotiable in my eyes. And the other thing that you have is a list of my priorities. And at the very bottom, you have something very fun that most people never get to learn about their bosses, which is their personal idiosyncrasies or their pet peeves for short. So what happens is I do all of these things with a commitment at the bottom for me to uphold that. Now, I'm very big also in my business foundation program where you learn about mission statements and you actually take the time to build one, to get out a dictionary and a thesaurus and expand what your daily goals are. I'm going to show up to accomplish this mission every day. Your leadership philosophy will directly support that mission. And then you develop a vision. What is the vision? The future version of myself. What do I want to be when I grow up, as a company and as a leader? Well, this leadership philosophy will help you and others grasp a hold of that vision. So I want to walk you through just a little pieces of mine. For example, Steve and I talked about core values a little bit tonight. And in that core value statement, we very much pointed that these are things that do not change, barring some traumatic life event, maybe having children or a near-death experience or finding a faith in religion. Your core values are not going to change. You're literally going to live for them and die for them and fight for them. So the core values, there is a test to draw this out, as you heard mentioned earlier. Mine are integrity and compassion and excellence. And I specifically say excellence because I can't pursue perfection. Only one guy was perfect, and I'm not him. But all of us can be excellent. I also mentioned things about my operating principles. This is how I'm going to show up. I'm going to be responsible for my actions and my decisions. And in reciprocal, I expect you to be responsible and accountable for yours as well. I'm not going to browbeat people for making mistakes. I expect you to make mistakes so that we can then fail forward and learn down the path of progressing you into a better person. If you know this about me, you're going to be a lot less hesitant to take initiative and try to solve something on your own and therefore grow, learn, and mentor yourself. I'm going to try to balance my involvement in activities, but of course, I am running the company. I've got to be educated. I've got to be aware. I have to have the ability to swoop in there and say, hey, what are you working on? I also am going to keep that open mind. I'm going to be interested in your thoughts. I'm going to be interested in your ideas. I can't say that we can implement every single thing along the way. And I certainly want you to try it the firm way, the company way first. And if then it doesn't work, well, by golly, let's go plug in some of your ideas and make things better. And I really want to seek to help you and others succeed. I really am almost addicted to helping people, to helping myself improve, to helping other people improve, and just really grab a hold of that better version of yourself because everyone has an image of a better version of themselves in their minds. Regardless of self esteem and self respect issues, we should always be striving to be better or more. Again, you can look through the leadership philosophy and set expectations. That's one of my leadership principles is setting expectations and boundaries. So if you set expectations in your leadership philosophy, people know exactly how far they should be going, how hard they should be pushing, and where some of those boundaries are. We can go this far, but no farther before we have to stop, think, act, work with our teammates to resolve the issue. So, giving best effort are some of those umbrella areas, but each person articulates their own leadership philosophy. That's what's really great about it. Is yours and mine may look not very similar, but they should be able to carry out the characteristics of a leader who influences people for positive change. So, I want people also to understand that I want you to have actions and own those, but I also want you to own anytime you have a lack of action or you omit to do something. Always be following the mission, always be chasing down that vision, be respectful. These are some pretty low hanging fruit for most people to understand, but then I get a little more into depth. I expect you to ask for help when you need it and provide it the help for those who are asking it of you. So you don't just get to, hey, that's not my job and snub people. But look at that next bullet point. It said, I expect truthful and complete information when asked or when discovered that I do not have that type of information. And let me tell you where this kind of saved a life one day. When I was running my very first SWAT mission as the now in place team leader, we had been to the bad guy's house a couple of times in the previous months, 3 times in fact, and we had very good detail layout information. That's not normal for most SWAT missions. So we gathered it all, we put our snipers and our recon teams out there, and we had a beautiful plan. And I talked to 2 of the 3 guys that had been to that location, got a great layout, and here's our plan order of execution, people, equipment, everything. But the guy that had the most current information was stuck on the big call. He was clearing the call, and we were all waiting for him to arrive in order to finish the debrief. Now, he was also the rookie on the SWAT team, just finished his certification. This was going to be his very first mission going in with the team. Well, in the back of the room during the debrief, he realizes that our approach and our setup is a little bit off. So he's kind of looking around nervously in the room and finally realizes that he needs to raise his hand and say something. So I call on him and say, hey, yes, what have you got? And he says, hey, Sarge, but they changed their living room. They flipped the furniture. That door you're wanting to go in is going to be basically barricaded with a bunch of heavy objects. I mean, we can get in there, but it's going to take a minute. We're going to have to fight through some obstacles. I confirmed 100% that was accurate. We flipped the whole mission. When we finally went in to get the bad guy, we went in smooth through the other door that he recommended, got onto the bad guy immediately, and he had a gun just 3 to 4 feet away from him in which he could have grabbed it, pointed it at the door that we wanted to come in, and been shooting like fish in a barrel at a team fighting just to get through a couch and a dresser. We'd have had a really bad day, and only because I had a leadership philosophy that emphasized giving me the truthful and accurate information, even if you discover I don't have it. I didn't have to ask him of it. He knew that he owed it to me. Now, most people I understand are not dealing in life and death situations. We're not dealing with executing high risk search warrants, but we are dealing with people's money, people's service, their households, their family members, a lot of really important things. And if you're withholding accurate information, you're destining people to ultimately fail. So pay attention to details is another one. Be service based, be accuracy based. And then I do want to harp on a couple more things before I wrap up the segment of the show. There are certain things that are just non-negotiable. No matter how good you want to be as a leader, if you have people that act in disobedience, they refuse to do something, you tell them to do something, do the opposite, they just won't cooperate. Well, those aren't mistakes, like I mentioned before. Those are malicious behaviors. And somebody who's going to act out in disobedience, they need to be corrected immediately, ultimately, possibly punished and disciplined, or let go. Misbehavior is another one. People that, oh, the boss is away at a long lunch break with a client, so let's play soccer in the hallway and break a picture in a computer monitor. That's misbehavior. Other misbehaviors, like any type of harassment activity or just carelessness, that's not mistakes. And then the last one is personal negligence, just not setting your calendars, just not getting your tasks done, showing up late to work over and over. These behaviors aren't mistakes. So I am very gracious with mistakes unless you make the same one 37 times and never learn. But the other ones are personal negligence. And then I always emphasize this: my priorities are first you, the employee, the physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional safety of you and your families. Too often we try to treat the symptoms, right? Oh, somebody's having a bad day, or they've been down for a week or two, or they're really slumped off in their work. And we try to get them extra training or move their teams or send them to a conference or give them a written action plan to improve and meet this measure. Well, oftentimes the human is suffering and therefore the work is suffering. If we draw up our priority as good, high functioning people, by default, we'll have good, high functioning employees. Second is the mission of our company and firm. Healthy people have to help us get to our mission. And I want to provide excellent service, and I want people to develop as a person and as a team member. And if we can do that while giving my funny little list of personal idiosyncrasies and pet peeves, like I'm really big on no vulgar and profane language. It's a professional office. We got women and children coming in here, and you're not going to talk that way. And don't procrastinate, and don't just hoard your experience. Share and mentor other people. And like little things, like if you make a mess physically or figuratively, go ahead and clean it up. So if you spill milk, get the paper towels out. You send an email to the wrong client, get over there and fix it. So, and also allow people to complain to me. And that may sound funny, but you can complain to me so long as you have a proposed solution. Complaints without solutions attached is just whining. So I ultimately summarize all of this up with a commitment statement: commitment to you, commitment to the mission. And we all work together, and you can use my philosophy to make these decisions in the future. So look back at everything that you heard today: how to start up, how to seek, how to focus on certain activities and grow, avoid good minds or avoid bad mindsets and chase good mindsets, and all of these behaviors. And I think if you instill growth as a leader, maybe by tracking down a leadership philosophy, and if you want to know more, of course, hit me up at CS Business Consulting, csbizcon.com, and we can work on these things with you, and I can plug you with other professionals that can work on them as well. But the last thing I want to say before we close out for the night is, whichever way you go next, I hope you find that pivotal change. So I want you to be out there, and I want you to see the change, and I want you to be the change. And we will catch you next time. Have a good night.
This has been a Now Media Networks feature presentation. All rights reserved.